All right, welcome back everybody. Well, this week we're going to go back to 1989 and the release of Tom Petty's first solo album called Full Moon Fever, which he wrote, he basically co-wrote with Jeff Lynne, I think, and Jeff Lynne produced it. And this is I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty. Just another great straight ahead classic rock Tom Petty song. So we're going to break it down. Like, the chords are not all that complicated, but there's a lot of different building block guitar parts, and I'm excited to go through that with you today. So if this is the kind of thing that you like and you haven't done so yet, please jump down, click subscribe, ring the bell. The bell will tell you when I drop new content. I do that every single week. All my videos have chapters in them, so you can jump right to the part of the lesson that you want to see and bypass what you don't. And if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, I appreciate that. There's thanks, just like throwing a tip in the tip jar. Even better, you can join my Patreon page where I've got chord charts and tabs for all the songs I do on YouTube, just like this one. And there also might be some merchandise, so all the links are down in the description below if you want to check it out. Okay, so I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty. So yeah, like I mentioned, there's building blocks, you know, and sort of this is emblematic of a lot of Jeff Lynne produced songs. It's very sort of orchestrated, all the sonic pieces of it. And so I'm going to go through all the guitar parts one by one. And let's start with the acoustic. There's lots of, there's like many acoustics, you know, doubled throughout this. There's 6s, there's 12 strings. I'm just going to go with the 6 string here and walk through the chords and sort of the approach of the strumming, okay? So very standard tuning. And our chords that we're going to go through here are, let's just start off with like the intro and the verses, right? The sort of main staple part of the song. So those chords are going to be E minor, D, and G. And you can choose, I default to that fingering of G, but you can do your open B string G. I think I hear that note in there a lot. So, right, those are the 3. And it's just very straightforward. I think it's 8th note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's just 8th notes on every measure. Right, so that's the approach. So it runs through that first 2 measures. Then when you stand me up at the gates of hell, that lyric, it changes to a C, and I think it's a C add 2 or add 9. I can never remember which is which. The chord chart will have the right notation on it. But so we'll start off with the first part, and then I'll run into the C. Here we go. Right? And you can play a normal C. But I just feel like that D note is sort of always in there. Right? Just great, straightforward. And then when we move to the chorus, it's gonna do this great sort of chord change thing where everything is sort of touching bass back to the G every time you're sort of moving in the chords. Here's what I mean. So we'll come to the chorus. Did you catch that? So every time there's you're bouncing to a next chord, it's like you touch bass back to G. That's just a C. you're always sort of holding on that eighth note pattern. I always want to sort of, but I don't think it does. I think it's very much straightforward. So something like, right? And you can do the sort of, I mean, that may be, those are the bass sort of chords. If you want to do modified chords on this, and this actually may be what he played on the record, is you just hold those notes down on the first and second string and move back and forth. Get some good suspendeds in there. And you could do that, or you can just play the normal D. And go with the C add 9 or whatever that is. But musically it'll all fit, either option that you do that. But I love having those suspendeds in there. And as we listen to all the electric parts that I'm going to walk through in a few minutes, you'll see how they're all sort of building on those too, and it just makes it musically interesting. And then during the guitar solo, it's all the same. It just solos over the verse. It's all the same formation. The only thing that changes is it sort of repeats the chorus as you're going through the outro. It goes in. Right, and just runs through again until you get to the end of it, and you're ending on a G chord. So in terms of the chords and the acoustic sort of bed that's happening throughout the whole thing, that's it. And the acoustics and the layered acoustics, there's also a 12 string that doubles a lot of this, that comes in during the choruses too, I believe, and stays in the second verse forward. But it all fills out, you know, it creates this great bed. But everything is moving in that eighth note sort of pace. For all the interesting electric stuff that we're now going to start learning about that goes on top of that. So let's start working through that. All right, so there's, like I mentioned, there's lots of layers of electric guitars going on here. So I'm going to try and represent each part and tell you sort of how these are laying together, and I may switch guitars to sort of illustrate different tones. I may not, but Tom Petty means Rickenbacker a lot of the times. So I'm going to go with this. I have no idea what guitars they used, except for the solo. I know what that one is. So there's basically two, if you listen, there's two electric parts that are panned left and right. And they're basically doing almost exactly the same thing. One is just a little bit more grittier than the other. But the parts that are happening are sort of palm muted. Okay, and you'll see the chord shapes over my shoulder. So the cleaner of the two guitars is sort of focusing on the fifth string, fourth, third, and we're just going to move from our E. We're not playing a full E minor. Right? So you're sort of hearing this. And I'm sort of exaggerating. He's being a little more loose than that, so sometimes he's hitting the low string too. But the vibe is that. Again, very eighth note, this is part of all of the glue that holds this song together. Right? And then so that's the vibe. And then when it gets to the chorus, it's just doing something like, you know, you're very much hearing that rhythmic chunking on those eighth notes. Now the other guitar is basically doubling what that's doing, except a little more dirt, a little more grit on the sound. It's panned to the other side, and it's focused more on the 6th, 5th, and 4th string, like a power chord, right? Or I guess I should say, he's laying off the 3rd string. Think of it that way, okay? But a little more grit. That kind of thing, right? When you get to the chorus, you really hear that one pop, you know. It goes back, it doesn't stay strong throughout the whole thing, but during that transition, it's got that growl. He's playing through one of his Voxes. He's playing through either the Super Beetle or one of his ACs, but it's definitely got that Vox growl on it. So otherwise the same, but that's the approach. That's the difference between the two. One's clean and is sort of emphasizing the 3rd string note. One's dirtier, grittier, and it's sort of laying off that for the most part. And that creates a little bit of difference, a little bit of, you know, the separation between the two, and it's cool. Now, what we're going to learn on the guitar solo is that he plays that in open G. And all these parts that I'm showing you in standard tuning, and that works fine. There's a little bit of, you know, there's that jump, which might be easier or more difficult. But if you notice, all of those could also be done in open tuning too. And it's hard for me to sort of choose between the two, what happened in studio. Like, that sounds pretty good, right? Like just in standard tuning. But if you wanted to sort of alternately see how it could be done, you can just pretend you're tuning, or well, not pretend, but you could do this in open G tuning, right? And if you're in open G, then that first guitar is, get your B string. Sounds like that to me. And then the grittier one. And it allows you to do this. You know, it just sounds a lot tighter, and it makes me think maybe that's how they were doing it in the studio. Just another way. But like I said, you could do it either open G or open tuning. Sounds great either way. All right, so let's move on to another guitar that's happening. All right, so I do not think he used this guitar on this part. I just wanted to pull down another guitar to have another tone to sort of illustrate this part and sonically be a little different. So once it goes into the chorus, there's this great guitar that's it just shows up during the chorus, and it plays these 3-note, I guess I'd call it a triplet, that creates these very interesting suspended chords when all of the other chords are moving back and forth. This is playing this 3-note repeated line that's sort of sitting behind or on top of all of that. And all it is open. It's like a piece of a G chord, but you're only playing the D, the fourth, third, and second string, and you're fretting that third note, second string to get that D note, right? And you're just repeating it, and you're not taking any breaks in the rhythm. It's just literally 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 as the 4/4 beat is going on, right? Right? It's sort of like when you hear it on its own, it's sort of no big deal. But when you put it in the context of everything else, it's a great thing that just sort of overlays and creates that sort of interesting arrangement. Here's what this sounds like against just the drum, which I think is interesting. You could just hear the sort of rhythm of threes over the rhythm of fours. But here, check that out. All right, also on the chorus, coming in there to my ears, like I know there's also 12-string acoustics that are happening, but I believe there's a 12-string electric that also makes an appearance on this when it's doing this back and forth between the chorus chords. And I think that guitar, to my ear, sounds like he's using that, you know, that C9 or whatever that is. Right? And you could just be holding. I think he does the normal D though. Right? But it just comes in like this. And I might have had the strum pattern off a little bit, but that's the vibe. It's just layering this little piece in there against all the other goodness that's going on, and it creates that Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne sound that we all love, right? But just a little bit, all right? All right, now with that, let's start talking about what's happening with the guitar solo. So let's check that out. All right, now on the guitar solo, we do know the guitar that Mike used. He actually talks about it. I'm going to link a video to that here. And he has a Gretsch that he uses on, and it had the not the Filtertron pickups, but the Hylotron, the single coil, a little bit lower output. This is the closest that I've got to his guitar that he's using, but this is my Gretsch, Nashville, technically. I guess it's the same as a 6120, but they changed the name to Nashville in the late 60s. And anyway, so he's got this tuned to open G to play this in on the record. And if you're not familiar with open G tuning, you can look it up, but basically you're taking your fifth and sixth string and you're tuning it down a step. So that's now a G, that's a low D, and then you're gonna change your first string also down to a D. So you're tuning 3 strings down and you're leaving 2, 3, and 4 alone. So it gives you an open G chord, but it's a very common slide tuning. And yeah, so he's, you know, just typical Mike Campbell. He plays like exactly, just comes up with a great part, and it's exactly what the song needs. And he's just so awesome. I'm such a fan. And anyway, so I'm going to just run through it slowly, the part. I like to use my fingers when I'm doing slide for the most part, and I have more control when I use it on the second, my index finger, so I'm going to go with that. He plays what really great slide players actually do, is with his pinky, but I don't have the strength or the control when I use that pinky yet, so maybe that's something I can work towards. But for now, second finger. And he starts with the first note up here on the second string, on the 17th fret. And I'm sure he got that because that's the way that that guitar sort of probably sustains better, maybe, on that note, on that string. I choose to play it on the first string, a little bit lower down. Right there, right? So I'm just going to go with the location of where the notes are first, and then we'll sort of talk about it a little more. So I'm just going to talk about the location. I'll just map out the location here of where we're going. So here we go. I'm just going to take you through the solo slowly, just where the location are for the notes. And then switch back to your second string. And here I like to switch to the pick. That last little bit, you're sliding up on the third string. Open, first string. Right, so that's what's happening there. So let me go through that again. So you're going to take that first note. Make sure you give plenty of vibrato on this if you want to sound like Mike. My slide vibrato is horrible, so I apologize in advance. That last part, think of that G chord you're doing is what you're doing. And notice I'm using my fingers because I can sort of alternate between muting the strings that I don't want to ring out, right? And it's a lot easier for me to do that sometimes where I'm using my fingers and my palm. These are all single note things for the most part. Come on down here to on your G string down to your D note. Don't you love that? And then this greatness. Love that. Wow, that was loud. You can do that, hit that C, or you can do the key thing, right? And then you can, like if you're playing this live, if you were one of those rhythm guitars, right, you can do this all day. Slide into your solo. That was sloppy. But anyway, you put it all together and it sounds something like this. All right, well, that was I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty off of Full Moon Fever, and I hope you learned something new today. So if this is the kind of thing that you like and you haven't done so yet, please jump down, click subscribe, ring the bell. Bell tells you when I drop new content. I do that every single week. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this, and if there's another song you want me to take on and do something similar, let me know what that is too. And until next week, take care, everybody.